food percentage.
Della's looking for me.
Okay, we are ready. If CNET's ready to go, I will call to order the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, November 21st. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. And we'll go to the manager for announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the November 21st regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you are attending virtually using the Zoom platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name and municipality of residence and the topic that you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing this meeting, I have just a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public using the Zoom platform are asked to remain muted to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. And finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Gracie Griffin?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to public input, and this is an opportunity for anyone to speak on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. And if you have something, please make your way to the podium and give your name and your township of residence.
My name's Wes Glebe. I live in Ferguson Township. This is by way of a public service announcement. Christine and I get this brochure, Worst Pills, Best Pills, published by Public Citizen. And on the back, there was this news brief about an over-the-counter availability of naloxone or Narcan nasal spray. I gave everybody a copy. As tens of thousands of people in the United States die of opioid overdose each year, expanding treatment opportunities for persons who are dependent either legally or illegally to opioids is essential. Better access to the overdose antidote, drug naloxone, and there's a bunch of other ones here, is critical part of the response. So you can read the rest of it. I just wanted to bring this in, and I thought it was interesting that there's now an effective nasal spray that can be purchased by citizens. Another ironic thing is that on this past Saturday on NPR, the Good Morning program with Aisha Roscoe, she had a couple of people on talking about the status, the attitudes of people towards people that are addicted, and it was very interesting. They suggest that the country really needs to turn its attitude around and start to realize that this is what would you call it, a disease or a malady that isn't going to be fixed by arrest, which has been the major way of dealing with it, that it needs to be dealt with in a more humane way. I recommend that you find that podcast. It was on Saturday morning, this past Saturday morning. It was really, really inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for bringing this to us.
Pardon?
Thanks for bringing this up and sharing all that information, and especially for the printout.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public input? Okay, not seeing any. We will move to approval of the minutes, and there are two sets of minutes on here, but I think we only had one. So one for the November 6th meeting. Were there any corrections to these minutes? And if not, would someone like to make a motion to approve these?
This is Patty. Move to approve the duplicate November 6, 2023 Board of Supervisor minutes.
Is there a second?
I, Mr. Thompson, will second that.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to authorities, boards, and commission reports, and up first is the University Area Joint Authority Report with Wes Glebe.
Is that me?
Yes, if you want to come right back up where you just were.
Did we just see that guy 2 seconds ago?
For the different.
I'm Wes Glebe, and I live in Ferguson Township, and I have the pleasure of representing Ferguson Township on the board of the University Area Joint Authority. Anybody who hasn't taken a tour, I recommend it wholeheartedly. It's quite interesting, and I think you'll be very surprised if you haven't done it already. So I'm just going to basically read this. This is what Corey Miller puts together for, I guess, all the boards of supervisors. So the first item is a Scott Road pump station replacement. Project complete. This was a long-running project because a lot of delays for equipment and whatnot. Guess what? The pandemic. But it's done now, so that's a relief. Ozone disinfection. Currently, UAJ uses ultraviolet light for the final disinfection for the water that goes to Spring Creek. UV disinfection is energy intensive. Ozone will not only reduce the energy requirements, but also provide enhanced disinfection and destruction of pharmaceutical and endocrine disruptors. Ozone equipment has mostly arrived and has been installed. The liquid oxygen tank arrives after Thanksgiving. The project is expected to be operational in December 2023. The ozone system will reduce the annual operating expense by $110,000 based on 2021 electric rates. $110,000, I assume that's a year. Anaerobic digester and sludge dryer. This project will replace the current composting system with a digester and sludge dryer. The digester will produce biogas which can be sold or used at the treatment plant as a substitute for fossil fuels. Center region municipalities have adopted Act 537 plan special study for the project. A delay in the design has been caused by the determination that existing compost building cannot be used in the project because of corrosion and potential weakness of the structural members. It was pretty rotted out. It just wasn't any way they were going to recycle that. Two smaller buildings will replace the compost building, which will result in a lower carbon footprint. So there'll be actually 4 digesters, 2 for sludge and 2 for food waste. And I think I said in my last report that I was really surprised, but there's so much commercial food waste required by law that I think that the food digesters are probably already oversubscribed. I mean, people are calling Jason Brown every day asking him, can we bring our food waste there? So that will be, I would think, a reasonably quick payback. UAJA and Center County Recycling and Refuse Authority are collaborating on including organics recycling in the project. The organics from CCRRA could potentially be separated and brought to UAJA for recycling into biogas. The Inflation Reduction Act allows UAJA to collect a tax rebate directly from this project, even though UAJA is nonprofit. Pennsylvania added a grant program through the Commonwealth Financing Authority, COVID-19 ARPA H2OPA, which UAJA is pursuing, which may further reduce the local share of the project if UAJA is successful. The state delayed announcement of awards until the November meeting. We're hoping to hear in December, but they delay meetings, they cancel meetings. So The bids have been received and the project cost is now $73 million. Award has been delayed to find out if the Commonwealth Financing Authority actually meets and makes any grant awards at the November meeting. Well, it didn't happen at the November meeting. Upon completion, the project will reduce the annual operating expense by $500,000 per year. A project presentation is available for viewing on UAJA website. The Meeks Lane Act 537 Plan Special Study. This project is on hold based on the pending development of toff trees. The special study is being revised to include an alternative which will serve that development as well as require less electricity. Number 5, rate disputes with State College Borough. UAJ has filed a complaint in the Court of Common Pleas of Center County asking for the court to declare State College Borough's withholding of partial payments unlawful. In 2021, UAJ completed a rate study and adopted the rate in November 2021 to be effective January 1st, 2022. The Pennsylvania Municipals Authority Act states that any customer that questions the reasonableness, keyword, or uniformity, keyword, of the rates are to file suit in the Court of Common Pleas. The borough has chosen instead to withhold full payment and pay based on the volumetric rate that they paid in 2021. To date, the borough owes UAJ an additional $2.2 million. It is very likely that another rate increase will be needed in 2024 for all of the other customers to make up for the reduced revenue from the borough. So since the borough has decided to do what they decided to do, it penalizes all the other ratepayers. You saw your rate go from 104 a quarter to 108, and if this doesn't get resolved appropriately or in a timely way, they'll have to put it up probably another $4. So. 6, that's been a very contentious issue. I came on board just as it was, falling in and trying to catch up with all the, It was pretty weird. The Puddintown Road Interceptor Act 537 Plan Special Study. The borough is expanding sewer lines as described in the Act 537 Plan Special Study for Calder Way, adapted by the Center Region municipalities in 2023. The special study requires an additional special study to address potential future surcharging in the Puddintown Road Interceptor sewer in the vicinity of Millbrook Marsh. Does everybody know what Act 537 is? You all do. Good.
Probably essentially.
Huh?
But if you want to give a very brief 101 on that,
Well, maybe you could.
doing public.
I mean, I know basically what it is. To me, as I was taught recently, 537 means that every township and the borough has to review the plans and agree on it. So that's basically what it comes down to, so that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And is that about right? Okay. Solar Array 1 purchase. In July of 2024, the first solar array is eligible for purchase. Purchasing the array will result in a savings of $5 million over 20 years. The purchase price is expected to be $3 million. So they've been using the solar, but as a lease program. and now there's a chance to buy it out. Overall financial impact of major energy and treatment plant projects. Overall financial impact and treatment plant projects, solar phase 1, solar phase 2, biosolids, aeration, and ozone. And total projected cost of construction from bond issues, $94.5 million. To avoid future capital costs, if we keep doing what we are doing now and replace the aging equipment, that line item is $22 million. Reimbursement of capital is $30 million. Net capital cost of construction is $42.3. Net of operating decreases and revenue increases, $93.2 million. Net benefit of projects over 25 years is $50 million. And since I've been on the board, I have to tell you, the numbers are probably always going to remain a mystery to me. So we'll wait for Mark to come in if you want to know anything about the numbers, because he's fabulous with that. But it seems as though UAJA as an administration doesn't really do any project. I mean, unless it's upgrade stuff that's, you know, rotted out or something. They don't do anything unless it's going to save money in the long run. So it's pretty amazing. I'm just have learned so much about the financial administration of that authority. I still don't even begin to really understand it, but it's impressive, at least to a dummy like me. It's really impressive. So I think from my limited perspective that it's really well run. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great report. Very much appreciate it.
Okay.
Questions on the report? Matt, go ahead.
Not so much on the report, but I want to say +1 on doing a tour for the supervisors out
my
there. It
question.
sounds great because my daughter in 5th grade was just out there for a field trip, and she had a lot of positive things to say. As you could imagine, 5th graders were very intrigued by what they saw.
Oh, they're more than intrigued. From what I hear, they have some astoundingly good questions.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's a big encouragement on UAJ's part that school classes come out for a tour.
So I guess I'd be curious about how the public could get in on a tour, because that was the one I went on, was my son's 5th grade class, so I did go on that one.
Right.
And then we can work with COG maybe and the Lucy Committee to get,
Well, I don't have the
board
telephone
members.
number right here, but all you have to do is call up,
Oh, okay.
and probably Sierra will answer the phone, and just tell her you're interested in a tour, and they'll set one up.
okay, well, I think we'd be
Yeah.
interested in that, and we'll look into doing that
Yeah.
in January.
I haven't, actually myself, I don't do much web stuff, but I haven't looked at the website, but I suppose that's another opportunity. So,
Yeah, I think we'd all be interested in that.
thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, so we'll move to special reports and acknowledgements. Under our DEI calendar events, we have National Native American, American Indian, and Alaska Native Heritage Month. The administrative offices will be closed for Thanksgiving on the 23rd, and World AIDS Day is recognized on December 1st. We'll move to COG and committee reports. Looks like we had a number of cancellations here. So Facilities Committee was canceled, Climate Action and Sustainability Committee.
We took a look at the document going out for the refuse and recycling proposals. We sent that over to executive committees, so I think you'll be able to inform us where that went. We're hoping for a vote in general forum this month.
Great, questions on that? No? All right, thanks. Looks like Public Safety and Parks and Rec governance was Park and Rec governance canceled?
It
or-
was canceled, but
Okay.
I did get an update on the meeting that I had missed. So basically what had happened was a matrix was developed with responsibilities for various functions of the Parks and Recreation Department, and a consensus of who they thought should have the lead on it, which body. So either Parks Authority or the Parks staff or COG staff or a COG committee, et cetera. And they put it all in a matrix, which will come to us to the general forum for consensus. And it's just a means of clarifying so that we're all on the same page and understanding that. And I will say, the whole thing is predicated on the idea that the Parks Authority is staying as a functioning body. So anyway, that's it. It should be coming to us at general forum, just a consensus building matrix.
Okay, questions on that? And let's see, we'll go to Finance Committee. And I'll just highlight a few things from the agenda. We did receive the 2022 audited financial statements. There was nothing to report there. There were a few different techniques or processes that categorize things. So some things would look different if you're comparing a previous year to this year. There were some negative fund balances because of the way that leases are going to be accounted for in the future. So if you see some discrepancy there, that's what that was. We reviewed the municipal comments on the 2024 COG summary budget. Those were included in the SharePoint, so you can see all of those comments. Most of them were about the process and future budget thoughts. I think our comments may have been the only ones to include some specific items to call out in this budget. So it was, just a lot of, the costs have expanded too much. But, I don't know. I think there were opportunities along the way maybe to address some different things. And I'll get into that in the executive committee report, but essentially the finance committee accepted those comments, moved the summary budget to executive committee for approval, and we did discuss that today. We had a list of a few items to review in the budget process. These came through those municipal comments and from the finance committee, including to look at the COLA calculation, the fund balance policy, insurance reserve, and so I'll get into that in the executive committee as well. That suggestion was moved to them. We talked about the Parks and Rec mobile concession budget amendment, and that was the item, if you recall, the general forum had approved an expense of $132,000 to purchase a food truck to service the pools. That project was reevaluated once the new park director came in, and it was suggested that 2 mobile food carts be purchased instead. That's at a much lower cost. The two combined to $25,000. State College Boroughs representative Nalini Christian-Kuddy and I were both supportive of trying one truck and seeing how it goes. There are other things that are transferred back and forth between the pools, such as the inflatable, and so we thought test it. It's, it can be outfitted in a way that provides some different grilled items, but it's still limited. We were also interested in just collecting the data and responses from that. That wasn't supported by the majority, so the 2 carts moved forward. We did not discuss the remainder of the funds. The actual discussion had gone on so long at that point that we held off on discussing the remainder of $107,000, discussing where we support that going. So if there's comments on that, I will gladly take those. We'll be discussing that at, I think, December December finance, and so then that would come to executive and general forum. So I think suggestions so far have been to put it into Hess Field. You know, I would be supportive also of returning it to the municipalities and then, you know, moving forward with the strategic plans of their capital projects separately. So I guess just keep that in mind, and we can take comment on that. The energy procurement agreement was discussed. This is just the electrical service provider contract. There's a lot of information in here on that. I'll move into executive committee because that may answer any questions you have about any of the finance items. There were a number of items on the consent agenda that'll be on the general forum agenda Monday evening. Let's see, including the summary budget, that will be on there. That did include the funding for the CCMPO items as presented at our last meeting by Eric Norenberg. The audits will be on there, and also on there will be the matrix for the Parks Governance Committee. So that will be on there for discussion. So that, we did talk about the regional refuse and recycling requests for proposals that's going out. Probably nothing different on here in the agenda from what Jeremy had last presented to us. There will be a lot of different options included in this RFP, and that was accepted and moved to general forum agenda. I wanted to clarify what the SPPA item was on here. That was just a specific clarification of what the general forum had approved for COGS participation. We had said 1.1 megawatts, approximately 75% of the 2022 usage of COG facilities electricity demand. When we looked at the numbers, when Pam Adams looked at the numbers at the end of the year, that was actually 1.2. So she wanted to confirm that the intent of the motion was to keep that at 75%. That was agreed, that was the intent. That'll be on the consent agenda on Monday. Again, the energy procurement agreement, that too will be on the consent agenda. It's a pretty routine item. The motion was to accept the lowest estimated bid on that. Again, we talked about the food carts, and the same motion was moved forward on the two mobile food carts. I again presented the idea of one, and that was not supported. And I mean, it really isn't that big of an expense, but you know, we had an additional item already that I'll get to at the end here on the expansion of the budget and the high costs. And, you know, the thought was, well, you know, we're continually increasing them. So, again, we talked about that list of items I had just mentioned about the budget process and reviewing steps for how to improve that, including the COLA, the fund balance policy, et cetera. There were some questions about this list that was moved from finance, so that's going back to finance. There is an item on there you'll see that says data used for COG formulas. There's a little difference of opinion, I think, about what all that includes, because the COG formulas were looked at not that long ago, and so finance just needs to clarify that just a little bit more. We did also have introductions today. The new CRPA director was introduced, and the new government relations representative at Penn State was introduced. And finally, one other item that was added was a discussion on library services provided to Half Moon Township as a result of them leaving the contract. And the discussion was actually mostly around county library services and the bookmobile and the bookmobile not running. And so it was, there was no motion that came from that, but that was discussed. And I think that was the highlights. Any questions on any of that? And again, most of these items will be on general forum agenda on Monday.
Just going back to some of the comments, I think from Finance and Executive Committee and et cetera, was there any discussion about a cap on the budget increase? You know how this year it was like close to 12 or 13%, and I thought we had set like maybe an 8%, and was there any sort of discussion on that, or?
I raised this item at finance as an item to include on this list to go back and discuss that 8% cap as well as using the prioritization. It didn't get added. I raised it again today. Let's go back and talk about the cap, what it's at, and how we incorporate the use of that prioritization in that it wasn't added again. It's because this list is going back to finance, I'll have another opportunity to try to incorporate that, but I think what I'd see from comment from the board is a really specific description of that item. So, you know, if we want to put forward, you know, an idea of, you know, it should always be 8%. You know, start with that. That should always, you know, we shouldn't be above that, or something like that. There was, you know, some difficulty, I guess, in calculating what that cap was going to be this year, and so that led to a lot of the budget segments being delayed. I don't see a need for that, and that was kind of some of the things I wanted to get into. I'm not sure what the hesitation is to look at that again, but there seem to be some. So, you know, if I'm hearing support in looking at that again, so I will raise that again, along with, like I said, using that prioritization checklist where we said, you know, public safety, taking care of what we have, this is the order of which we'd like to see things added. And we'd like to see a budget that comes in at that cap or below, and not that plus a list of other things, including firefighters. So I'm hearing support. I'll take that back to finance, and hopefully we can get some other kind of discussion. And maybe it's an independent item. Maybe it's independent of what this is. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other questions on any of these items that you'll see on Monday? Okay. And we will move to staff reports. And first up is the manager's report, if there was anything.
I will provide an updated report to the board at the December 5th meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thanks. Questions for manager? Not seeing any. Okay, we'll move to the Public Works Director's report. If there was anything to ask about that. Not seeing anything. Planning and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Public Works Director, have we switched over to winter operations yet, or? I'm not sure.
I will provide an update on that
Okay,
in the near future.
yeah. I know that leaves were just picked up in my neighborhood not so long ago, but I didn't know if it was coming again, or if we've switched to winter operations.
I can check on that. If the specific question is, will brush and leaf come back around?
Yeah.
I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Question.
The trucks were out today and yesterday.
Oh, did they have the snowplows on the front then?
No, they just, I only saw the leaf trucks.
I just know that they say once they switch to winter operations, meaning they put the snowplows on,
That's
then
correct.
that's
Yeah.
done, but, so, yeah, that would be great, thank you.
Okay, Planning and Zoning Director's report. Anything to highlight?
My report is included in the agenda. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you. Questions on planning? Not seeing any. And Chief of Police report. Anything to highlight from that?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My report is included in the packet. More than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions for Chief Petrick?
Yes, so I noticed in the notes there was an incident being investigated where a vehicle had gone over, was exceeding 100 miles per hour, and then I noticed later on in the report there was something, it looked like a motorcycle was also going over 100 miles per hour where those the same incident or two separate incidents of vehicles
No.
over 100?
No, two separate incidents. We're experiencing quite a bit of unsafe driving along Whitehall, so we've increased our presence there, and we are filing the necessary and proper citations, and then we let the courts handle it from there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for continuing to keep an eye on Whitehall. I know that's been an ongoing concern. And, you know, it's just very unfortunate that we're finding motorists in the township going that fast. Whether you're in the urban area or even out on Whitehall, there is a variety of pedestrian activities and even farming activities out in the western end that's just a recipe for disaster. Anyone going over the speed limit, let alone that fast. So,
Absolutely, but we do have a very visible presence there and are very, very active. And again, the officers are issuing the proper citations, and then we let the court system take place if the individual pleads not guilty.
so yeah, thank you for your service to our community, you and your team for their service to the community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions on that? Thank you, Chief. Okay. We'll move to unfinished business, and first up is a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, adopting the 2023 Ferguson Township Strategic Plan. We'll go to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the 2023 strategic plan update for board consideration. I understand that there had been a glitch and not being able to access the strategic plan, but that has been corrected. It is available as it was available with the November 6th Board of Supervisors regular meeting agenda packet as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, it's ready for board action.
Thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Are there any public comments on this item? And seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
This is Patty. I move that the board adopt the resolution. Is that good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a second? Would anyone care to second the motion?
This is Corey, I second.
Thank you. Okay, now we can have discussion.
All right. I guess I'll start. I don't know.
Sure.
It's an arduous process. I did receive some feedback on some of this, with maybe some exception to the vision statement that was listed and some of the economic development steps that were listed, but I struggled with this because this process was so arduous. And I realized that a strategic plan is aspirational, and so I am comfortable with what we have, realizing that we probably will be revisiting this with again a new board and in a couple years sooner rather than later, because this sort of fell through the cracks of a really transitional time, being COVID and transition in township leadership, et cetera, and realizing that it's aspirational and more of a guiding light. Anyway, some of the suggestions that I had received, particularly regarding economic development, are great suggestions and things to be considered and maybe incorporated. But anyway, that's where I stand in support of moving this forward and continuing to develop our goals and aspirations.
Other comments?
Yeah, I too had received some comments regarding the economic development section. And I did receive some good ideas, and I don't necessarily want to dive into how we now execute the strategic plan, but I think when it comes to economic development, we want to make sure that we have the business community at the table to get their feedback, any concerns that they have, because for us to thrive in economic development, both the business as well as the consumer needs to be able to be successful. If the consumer isn't successful, the business isn't, if the consumer isn't interested and attracted to it, the business isn't going to work either. So you want a win-win for both parties in the end, so. And I think definitely would be eager to maybe expand upon this or take another look at this as we go forward. These aren't necessarily plans that we just put on the shelf and leave them sit for 10, 20, 30 years. So we'll have another opportunity here probably in the really near future.
Other comments?
For me, I'm curious, maybe a little bit about the point of procedure around the strategic plan here. I noticed, going through it, that looks like a lot of the communications and engagement that was done with the community was around 2021. So do we anticipate revisiting this next year? It might be good for me to understand kind of the timeline on the overall strategic plan and when we anticipate revisiting it, because I have some ideas on maybe how to move forward with this one as well.
I can take that, or if you want to.
Well, at this time,
Start.
the board did not budget funds to engage a consultant to do another strategic plan update in 2024. But we certainly could consider a budget amendment if that was something that the board would like to do. Or we could have discussions as part of our CIP, our capital improvement plan, as to when we would want to do another strategic plan update. In terms of this becoming adopted, it serves as a guiding, tool for staff as we make decisions at the operational level in pursuit of various activity that needs done, whether it be routine or as we're just making decisions with communications, for example. It's really looking to all of our plans, everything ranging from the RPOS plan, Recreation, Parks, and Open Space plan, to strategic plan update that informs on, and guides our decision-making at the staff level. So that's kind of how we do the execution of it. There is, for example, budgeted, I think, a communications plan update, and so that is based on our strategic plan, knowing that we have the municipal identity, the board has identified having municipal identity as a priority. So oftentimes requests from the board, from staff during CIP and or operating budget is a result of staff taking action to try and align projects, tasks with what's identified in any plan. So hopefully that answers your question.
And I'll add on to that, this was an update from the 2017 plan. And so the intent had been to execute this and improve this, but with turnover, it got delayed. So there's been, I would say roughly 2 years of comment and changes and updates on this already now that we're here at this point with it. So it has evolved since the first iteration of this version. With that, we did discuss at a couple of the times this has been in front of us this year, doing a minor update or a refresh between this adoption, and we try to do this every 5 years, and the next update, knowing that there was this 2-year period of continued work on it. So acknowledging that occurred and saying, there may be a time in 2025 that we want to look at this again and tackle some of these things. So that was just a little additional background on that. Other questions?
No, and I appreciate that because, again, looking at these, as I do in the term guiding principles, is really that idea, high-level vision for what we want to see in the township. I guess for me, it's really then kind of getting into the accountability aspect, is how do we go ahead and track and, stay informed of key performance indicators, how we're actually meeting the objectives that are outlined in the goals, be them wherever they are. I know, like we require from the ABCs, they have work plans at the beginning of every year. Is there another layer down that we look at KPIs, that we look at, those sorts of things?
And I recall at one of our discussions on this year, we did suggest that adding something like that as part of the refresh, to go back and add some, because we've done this in a different format previously where that was maybe more of a center of the document, and in this version, it was tackled in a different way, and so that's not what this will be as much. Now that we've reached this point as an additional addition, we said, well, maybe that's something we can add in this refresh that we do. So, and I'd have to look back at that discussion.
And I would just add too, I generally appreciate as well having that baseline and being able to have measurable goals, the SMART acronym, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and targeted? No, yeah, maybe. But, I would say too that the development of the strategic plan update, those goals weren't designed in that way. And so to your point, both of your comments actually, I would certainly embrace those types of goals in future strategic plan updates, but then we would just need to be very mindful about how we're crafting those goals. Whereas some of the goals as presented, we could easily check yes or no, but some of the goals are a bit aspirational. And so I think in terms of, trying to have a baseline or a measurable tool for this particular strategic plan update, it would kind of require the board maybe through a work session to talk through, like, how would you make each one of these goals measurable because they weren't crafted in that way. So I'm not suggesting that it's not feasible, but also identifying that if we do a refresher rather than wait 5 years, if we waited maybe 2 or 3 years, which the board certainly would be able to discuss in more detail during CIP to determine when you'd want to budget funds, for us to do a refresher of, we're already talking about the next plan update.
Right, exactly.
As I'm talking, I'm realizing we're already talking about that.
Yeah, that's it.
But I can appreciate that, and generally, really like those measurable SMART goals.
And like I said, that is how it was done in the past. The board, when they took this on, went in that, this specific direction, and but I'd agree with revisiting a different plan.
And for me, I guess it's more of an immediate goal. In maybe a year, coming back to the table and having the SMART goals, however we want to do it, identified in KPIs, et cetera. So I don't know if I'm ready to say, because I also have some questions where I see some, maybe I'll call it contradictory language. Things where we call out in the SWOT analysis, the ideas of we want to go ahead and find affordable housing, but we also want to restrict development of lands. Well, how do we find some common ground in those things that seem essentially opposed to one another? So I'm wondering how we have a deeper conversation about the things that are outlined within the plan going forward here. So what does that look like? How do we kind of bring that to the table? Again, it's kind of a point of procedure when we say, hey, how do we find some common ground? What's the best way to approach that? I don't know, but I was hoping to have a little conversation about that too.
I guess in terms of that, I think we're still transitioning. The board is going to be transitioning, staff is still transitioning, and I think these are, the strategic plan as it is now is more guardrails for us as opposed to ready to really dive into things. So that's just my thoughts. And
I'd agree with that, and I think it was more of a visioning approach, and I think the SWOT, I don't have it up right now, but I think that SWOT analysis, was that part of the public meeting?
Yes, they would
Data.
gather there from
Yeah, so
businesses, et cetera.
And so then if you look kind of within it, we're identifying, we'll use the regional growth boundary. So I think, there are, strategies that are being used, and I'd look to our workforce housing ordinance and the Lucy committee work and things like that. So I think there are big, broad discussions we can have on those items. I don't know if that SWOT analysis would get changed, because I think that was, but I don't know, I'm not bringing it up right now. I just think that one particular thing was part of the public outreach.
Yes.
Okay.
Different, and I think, guess, kind of from my perspective, yes, I also received feedback on the economic development approaches, and I have some concerns too with, focusing on business, growing business, et cetera, when we really need to think about housing and, workforce housing and everything else to increase what I would say is, a better tax base as we go forward, because we know we have some financial struggles we want to avoid financial struggles. So how do we look at this? So what I was wondering is, since we don't have a recommended motion in this, but we can craft it, do we want to put something on the calendar, maybe for a work session? I don't know what the standard maybe lull in the year looks like. Is it a January thing when things might be a little slower, where we can maybe lean into this a little bit differently in a work session or two, or February, where we can start to put some numbers or thoughts around this and maybe make some caveats and adjustments to it? Is that possible?
So are you making asking for an amendment to the motion, or?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought the motion.
Yeah, the motion
There's
is
a-
missed. It's to adopt, the
Patty did
recommended
make the
motion is to
motion,
adopt the
though, and Corey
resolution.
seconded.
So then I guess I would be making a motion to amend that, to have us revisit this on the calendar in the early part of the year and maybe put some numbers behind it, again, back in that operational sense. But I guess I'm asking the question or
Wait.
wanting the discussion.
I'm willing to support it, but I want to be mindful of staff time.
Yes,
So
yes.
are we thinking, I would be a little more comfortable the first half of the year. Not necessarily as soon as
Oh,
January.
no.
but-
I'd look to the manager, actually, before we move any further with
I would
the
say
amendment
right
to the
now,
motion.
With staffing levels right now, if this is something the board would want to do, I would consider a consultant if you're looking for a change in the next year. If you're looking for a change to the goals to be completely rewritten and then have measurable accounts with that, to work on this, it took this long because it ended up being a side project shared between the assistant manager and myself. And then we brought in an intern to try and wrap it up, and even the other delegation of tasks and duties ended up becoming prioritized as it related to I think we're at like our 60 right to know request for the year. So it ends up becoming a priority that gets lowered in comparison of what's going on that week. So it's not that I would say it's not a high priority. It's just that there's not a dedicated staff person that works on this. In the past, the township has always engaged a consultant to do our strategic plan without measurable, like without crafting SMART goals. So to bring in that high level of, very professional approach, which I think would serve the township well, I agree. I would say you don't have that's a special grant, that is a special skill set to write SMART goals and then to be able to set up a document to track it. And again, I think that those skills are acquired by some staff, but I don't know who I would, right now, we just don't have anyone that we've ever assigned this project to. So if the board would want to allocate funding to provide some assistance to offset the workload for next year, I'm absolutely in support of handing this to someone to assist.
And I'll add, while I wouldn't support doing that right now, I would support looking at that for when we do rewrite, when we do the next update for the strategic plan. I am supportive of having some recognizable goals and checklists and things. We had, like I said, we had that before in the strategic plan, so I would be very supportive of revisiting that format that we've had before. But, I want to allow you the space to make your recommendations and stuff. I just adding a lot of caveats.
No, this is invaluable. Again, it helps me understand the different perspectives and approaches. Because for me, I guess I took kind of the level of effort where theoretically, I could even take 20 pages and write SMART goals around this, having done something like this before. So I guess I didn't anticipate maybe a significant level of effort around it, as it's happened in the past. I'm happy to offer any service I can provide in doing that. But then again, it sounds like, revisiting this to a level that would be appropriate, maybe it is better held off for the revision time that we already identified. So I guess I don't have a clear path figured out. Just, again, I wanted to have the discussion around adding these in a timely manner so that at least we can focus on, like we require the ABCs, some sort of focus for the upcoming year, et cetera.
Yeah, and I want to add too, since, and then I'll go to Corey, that because of the level of public engagement that we did on this iteration of this, I just don't want that to be lost either. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at the appendices that are attached to, and so there's a lot of information included in there. And so, if we were to do something next year, we would really need to pursue that kind of level of community engagement again to get that feedback for it to be a legitimate strategic plan. So I'll go to Corey next.
Thanks. Matt, I totally share your thoughts about this. The first time that I saw the strategic plan draft as a supervisor, I was also a little surprised about the lack of SMART goals, and I don't know, I probably started a very similar conversation the last time the board was visiting this. For me, I think the challenge is as a strategic plan, this is everything and the kitchen sink, right? Like it just covers so many things that would be, I think, one of the things that was challenging to me was figuring out, well, how do you even prioritize, right? When you have so many goals and objectives, like how would we even start that particular process? So I think I've come to think about this the same way that Patty does, in that, like, this is some broad sort of guidelines based on a lot of community input over a long period of time, right? And in which there's been a lot of transition to help point us in general directions. Now, that's not ideal. I don't think that's ideal either. But I would think that we would need a strategic plan that had fewer goals, fewer objectives, and then you could make some SMART goals, right, and get things done. I think trying to tack I came to the point of saying, like, to try to tack those on to this particular plan would be challenging, I think, just given how much stuff is in it. Like, how do you choose even which objective to make a goal for the board over the next year? Particularly, given the transitions that are happening both on the board and with staff right now. So I too have come to the mind that I think hopefully there will be a more stable board of supervisors in place the next time that this is revisited, because I think that will also help keep the next strategic plan a little bit tighter the next time around. But I too think that the one you're even seeing, we cut down, right? There's a lot fewer objectives than there were because we went through a serious slashing process. And I think, this is the best, I think this is the best we're going to have right now. The only other thing that I would add is just a little side note on page 21, it jumps from objective 7 to 9. We cut one out, but didn't change the number there.
There's a joke there.
Thanks, Corey.
Interestingly, as the first appointed supervisor of this current board, we were cutting a lot of stuff in our work session before Mr. Heller and Mr. Gracie Griffith came on board. It was that big at that time yet, too.
So, yeah, and this is invaluable for me. And again, it sounds like we agree, we're in a transition phase. This is a guideline. There's a lot of stuff in here that can be interpreted one way, who's reading it one way, as opposed to somebody else might have another good idea on how a goal is met versus someone else. So I think it opens the door for multiple visions to come in without being restrictive. But I think as long as we earmark this as transitioning, open for discussion. Next time around, we're going to be, essentially more succinct and higher level goals with some specific smart, if smart's the right approach, smart goals and measure something measurable. I think that I'm all right with this, but again, just as a guideline and really not much more than that.
I think there was a lot of room left in there, knowing this is a different format and the time it's taken to finalize this. A lot of room was left in there for staff to be able to apply the goals to something practical. And so we really did try to make it a usable document so that it's, we can achieve some of these things and not really prescribe really specific ways that we're going to dictate that staff goes about it. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in there. I think it has been a very, very long work in progress, and I think where it's at right now is, there's a lot in here that was consistent from the previous strategic plan as well. I'll say that too. There's a lot of carryover in terms of wording about mission and vision. A lot of things did carry over. I don't think you'll ever have a perfect plan, and I don't think you'll ever have, say this is it, this is all we ever need. I think that's why it's always updated, and and that's one of the reasons it's taken so long, because there was a lot of change and new ideas constantly. I think it's an important goal to get this adopted and completed at this time, so I'll be in favor of moving this forward at this time, understanding that that we want to look at it again before 5 years. I think this is not the one that we will hold for the next 5 years, and so when we talked about it earlier, we were kind of using that previous year mark, I guess it was 2019, sorry, I said 2017 or 2019, as that, as that year that we would benchmark, so. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm at. I really, really appreciate all the thoughts and comments. I think it's so helpful as we move forward, and probably helpful to the manager to see, how we're all viewing the plan, and just, wanting to see it used until we're able to get back into it. But I really appreciate everybody's flexibility on this too. It's not been an easy process. But it was a good one. We had so much public engagement on this, so many different meetings with different groups, and like I said, there has been, 2 years for public comment to come in on this, and we've had it, and so all that's been so appreciated, all the emails and everything on this, so, and very much a thank you to staff for their hard work and efforts on this, so. But I don't want to be dismissive of any concerns either, because I absolutely do recognize them and agree with a lot of the comments that were made. And these are all notes for the future about how we move forward and make things better and improve over time. So.
Yeah. And my focus will be those areas where increasing the revenue coming in, what can we do in that space? So I'm going to be kind of using this as my guidelines for picking and choosing conversations in the upcoming years too, around, okay, we hear this, we understand, and now what can we do to go ahead and ensure that we are good going forward with the tax base, et cetera. So again, I'll use it as guidelines as well.
Yeah, and that's, using the old one, I think the old one had a category of fiscal responsibility or financial responsibility, and we're changing it to resiliency. These are all, evolutions of how, we're seeing things differently and adapting and taking different paths toward improving conditions. And so I think that's all good. That's all good comment. Additional comment?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not in any opposition to the plan. The plan was, a lot of hard work went into the plan, a lot of community engagement went into the plan. Now, I would be cognizant, understanding that over time and depending on current events and other dynamics and happening in and around the world, there may be the the feedback or needs or demands of our residents may change, and to be cognizant of that and be able to be responsive to that. Even if there are needs and desires that come about that may not have necessarily been a topic of discussion during the last strategic plan, so.
That's the resiliency piece.
The resiliency piece, yes, so.
Very good, yeah. Any other comments or discussion? Okay, and we've had a motion and a second. This is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Resolution 2023-35. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to a public hearing on a conditional use application and approval of the decision on a conditional use application for all other commercial uses. I'm going to go to Ms. Wargo.
Thank you. So there was actually a typo in that. We already had the public hearing, that was November 6th. So provided in the agenda is a application for the conditional use permit for BDC's Holdings for 3610 West College Avenue. They are requesting conditional use approval for the 3,000 square foot outdoor self-storage facility. This is in the general commercial zoning district. We provide that if the lot is at least 20,000 square feet, you can go through this conditional use process for all of their commercial uses, not included, expressly permitted in the zoning district. So the township zoning ordinance and municipalities planning code require a public hearing on the application. The board must take action to approve or deny the application within 45 days following the hearing. So the regular meeting of November 6, 2023, the board held the public hearing and received testimony from township staff and the applicant. Provided with the agenda is a draft decision prepared by the Director of Planning and Zoning based on the record from the public hearing that was held on November 6. No additional testimony will be taken at tonight's meeting. The board is asked to review and discuss the draft decision and take final action to approve or deny the conditional use permit.
Thank you. So we did not hold the actual public hearing on the 6th because we thought
Wasn't.
we didn't need to. So we will just do the public hearing.
We talked to the solicitor, and it's fine to go ahead and
Okay.
hold the public hearing and then make the decision and approve the decision.
Okay. Huh.
Yeah.
We are good with advertising for that as well? Okay.
Because it was this was advertised as a public hearing. Yeah.
Two,
So
2 consecutive weeks?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. Is that correct?
I will confirm.
Okay.
So we had it on for a public hearing at the last meeting, and it did not get held. We went back and it was on the agenda, but we did not open the public hearing. We
Oh, it
closed
was
the
on.
public hearing.
Okay. We would need to confirm that it was
So we-
advertised
right.
2 successive weeks in a row. This is similar to a zoning hearing board type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
You were out of the office last week when this was observed, and so we went ahead
Yeah.
and administration contacted the solicitor. I went on to CNET and realized what had happened.
Yeah.
And then we updated this agenda in accordance with feedback. So we'll make that confirmation if you want to hold the public hearing. In the
Yeah.
event that it was not advertised, then we will just, we will hold it again.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
that fine?
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So we'll move forward with that. Okay. Okay. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing for comments on this item. Not seeing any, so I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
I'm looking for it here.
I have it if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Matt. I'll make a motion that Board of Supervisors move to approve the conditional use permit from BDC Holdings Incorporated for 3610 West College Avenue, 24004-079H-0000 to permit an outdoor storage area.
I, Mr. Thompson, will second that.
Thank you. Discussion on this item. And again, we'll confirm the advertisement on this. Rehold if necessary. We did have the discussion and a vote on this, but did not do the public hearing. Any other discussion on this item? Not seeing any, and this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for 2023-36. Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heller,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to authorization for a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson Center County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 27 zoning, Part 7 supplemental regulations, Section 716 workforce housing by repealing it and replacing it in its entirety. And we'll go back to Ms. Wargo.
All right, provided in the agenda is a proposed ordinance amendment, Chapter 27 zoning, Part 7 supplemental regulations, Section 716 workforce housing. Currently, the workforce housing ordinance is applicable to the traditional town development and terrace streetscape zoning districts. And the township requires a contingency of workforce housing units to be built in both. The ordinance amendment proposed to amend applicability, area median income, for rentals and for sale units, and add additional workforce housing options for developers. Since the September 19th regular meeting, staff have met with regional managers and planners as well as the development community to collect input on the proposed ordinance. Consensus was reached that a more regional approach to workforce housing ordinances would be beneficial, and stakeholders want to pursue further review and amendments with the regional context in mind. However, given developments where the current ordinance is being applied to, there are significant issues that need to be addressed now. Staff is recommending amending the ordinance now to address those issues, and in 2024, work with the regional municipalities and development community on a more holistic approach to workforce housing ordinances in the region.
Thank you. Okay, on this, why don't we start with discussion in case there's any discussion on this item.
Presentation ready as well to go over those amendments. The red line draft in the agenda, the blue are the actual changes being made. Green is more cut and paste and reorganizing of the ordinance. So that it's currently in our ordinance and it will remain.
I just wanted to ask what has changed since the last time we saw it.
The comment that we received from you on expressly putting in there the zoning districts this isn't applicable to, based
Oh,
on
okay.
the
Yeah, I
county's
did see it,
original
yeah.
review. So that is the only change. The area median income, the additional options for developers to provide these units, those are all still being recommended to go forward. College Township, I believe, has already started their process to amend their ordinance. Patton Township is doing the same as well. Those were the municipalities involved, as well as State College Borough. I think everyone at the table recognized that there are different needs based on the borough and the townships. And so it's my understanding, because Patton, College, and Ferguson, we are all included on an MOU with Center County Housing and Land Trust, that this is something that all of those municipalities are going to be working on in 2024 together.
Great. And so because there was just that one change, this didn't have to go back through CRPA?
I don't think it's going to go to CRPC. It's not a significant change. I still would feel better sending it to the county and the CRPA, just with that additional, it's more of a clarifying comment of where this ordinance isn't applicable to.
Okay. The one thing that was in there still is the additional height, the additional story. accommodation, so that one is still in there, and that was the one we had identified during the TSD discussions to look at removing. So that would be, if it's going back through the rounds, I guess that would be my only comment, is this the time to do that?
Last I remember on that discussion, we were waiting for the solicitor's review of the final
Okay.
Terrace Streetscape amendment to capture that height restriction in that ordinance, as well as recognizing the regional approach to this on what is the best way forward. There was a lot of discussion on student housing development and how we can make those numbers work. So while we have, I think there's language that's gonna be captured in the Terrace Streetscape ordinance that is almost to the effect of, any other ordinance that is arbitrary to what is included in here would not apply
Okay.
in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, any other comments, questions on this?
Well, I guess to that point, that is what we had talked about was going wider, not taller, right? So, sounds like we'll be able to revisit that and have that conversation.
That's what I'm hearing. is-
Okay, just want to
Part of
confirm.
that discussion, because while we are permitting wider, it doesn't change our stormwater requirements. So while it may sound good in theory, it may not be reasonable or logical with our state mandated requirements for that stuff. And that's really what we're gonna tackle at the regional level. We understand that there are these state mandates for stormwater, and we recognize the best way that these ordinances can work for the development community is less stormwater mitigation on these properties, which is really out of our control. So that is all part of this discussion, including infrastructure. That is a significant amount of money, as well as equity included in these. You'll see in our ordinance, and this is what I think College Township is gonna be looking at, they have similar flexibility, I will call it, for the development community of parkland and open space being decreased if workforce housing is being required. So this is gonna be a very big discussion at the regional level to how to get the workforce units while recognizing that to build the workforce, stormwater, the infrastructure, sidewalks, parking, it doesn't help the development community either. And that's really gonna be the biggest discussion, and what can we legally be doing now with these types of incentives, I'll call them.
Okay, good question.
So I guess my question then is, does that conversation at the regional area then get down to Harrisburg? And, because it sounds like, we want to do so many good things, but then stormwater seems to creep in usually a pejorative way, or a punitive way, that kind of restricts what we're thinking of doing in the township. So I'm wondering, does that regional conversation go further? And are there plans to take that further that we're hearing about, et cetera? Just curious.
It's a great question. That's some of the stuff that a lot of those conversations that we had with the development community and the managers and the planners took place. While this all sounds great, the reality of it working isn't realistic. And that's where we have to identify what are the incentives, what's the flexibility that's gonna make the needle move for the development community in order to provide this type of housing.
Yeah, so that's really my question, is just getting
Yeah.
it back to essentially the powers that be in Harrisburg that have the unfunded mandate that seems to keep restricting us on development and everything else, is how does that conversation proceed? So again, something that I'll be keeping in the back of my mind to see what we can do to further that conversation and maybe loosen things a little bit so that we can have the development that's necessary. Again, back to our tax base, back to all those things that we want to go ahead and reduce some of the burden of the citizens that we have in the township. So
Yeah, and I'd say the other big discussion that we had was really those AMI numbers, when HUD came out with those new numbers in the summer this year. That's really the reason behind this amendment, was getting those numbers right based on the new HUD numbers. And then at the end of the day, tying that consensus, that connectivity of all of the regional municipalities that are requiring this type of workforce housing, to have someone come into the land trust, they qualify for housing in Ferguson Township, but they don't in Patton Township because the AMI numbers are different. That's a hard discussion to have with anyone who's just looking for affordable housing. So those are gonna be a lot of the big discussions that we're gonna be having in '24.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Okay, any other questions, and if not, would someone want to make the motion?
Yeah, this is Matt. Go ahead and, let me just see here, make a motion that we move that the Board of Supervisors authorize advertisement of a public hearing to amend Chapter 27, Part 7 Supplemental Regulations, Section 716, Workforce Housing.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, any other discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Thank you, okay. So we'll move to new business, and we have one item on the consent agenda. If anyone wants to remove anything, please do so, or I'll take a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
This is Patty, motion to approve the consent agenda.
And this is Matt, I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson Center County, Pennsylvania, approving the naming of 10 Oaks Lane to improve and enhance the response of emergency services personnel for properties located on the lane. And back to Jenna.
All right, provided in the agenda is a copy of the resolution approving the naming of 10 Oaks Lane as a private street. The single-family residential home is proposed to be built on tax parcel 240303001A. This property is zoned rural agriculture, and it is approximately 2 acres. Resolution 2017-8 designates the Board of Supervisors as the authority to approve the naming of lanes, roads, and streets in the township, adhering to Center County 911 street and road naming criteria when 2 or more structures are sharing a road. So included in the agenda is a draft resolution naming this road as 10 Oaks Lane as approved by 911.
All right, thank you. So this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing for any comments on this item. And not seeing any, so I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion, and I guess we just need the resolution number on that motion.
2020, a resolution number for the naming of the.
Yep, 2023-37.
37. Okay, if someone would like to make that motion.
Well, this is Patty, I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt resolution number 2023-37, approving the naming of 10 Oaks Lane as a private street in Ferguson Township.
Second.
This is Corey, I second.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just quickly, are we sure there are only 10 oaks on that lane?
I have not confirmed.
Okay, well, we'll go with it.
You'd be surprised how long it took to get to that name.
Okay.
It's a fluid thing.
Interesting.
It's kind of like the Big Ten, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so there could be 10 or 11.
Or 12.
Or-
However many you want. Okay, and this is a roll call vote.
This is a roll call vote for 2023-37. Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heller,
Yes.
Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
5 yes votes for 10 Oaks Lane.
Only if there are 10, though.
All right, so we'll move to consideration of a waiver for Nittany Dental minor alteration plan at 2591 Park Center Boulevard.
All right, on October 16th, 2023, Pantera Engineering submitted a minor alteration plan to the Nittany Dental Land Development Plan, this is tax parcel 24465001, to accurately reflect the as-built on-site now that construction has been completed. On October 30th, the applicant submitted an application for consideration of a waiver from 225C01D loading requirements. The applicant is requesting the elimination of a loading zone that is current use, the current use on the site receives very limited deliveries. It is a dental site. It does not require a loading zone. There's still ample amount of parking on site. Planning Commission and staff have reviewed the request and is recommending the board grant the waiver without conditions. So one of the questions that Planning Commission did have was just that this is only specifically for this use on this site, correct? If we were to ever get a changing use, whatever, that would, again, require our ordinances to be applicable. And then it would be that case-by-case basis on the type of use if this were to be required for a future use at the site.
Very good. All right, would someone like to make the motion?
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that the Board of Supervisors grant the waiver from 2022 5C01D loading regulations for Nittany Dental minor alteration plan.
Second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
Okay, discussion on this item.
Just want to thank the Planning Commission for all their hard work. I remember being on the Planning Commission when this applicant first established their location here, so.
Very good. All right, anything else? Okay, if not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to communications to the board.
I'll start, I guess, just some feedback that I had on the strategic plan, and then also about the bicycles. There are 2 unattended bicycles. One of them is, it's bike locked to our signs right at the beginning of the McKee Street bike path on the corner of Clinton Road, or Clinton Avenue and Curtin Street. And then just in that little parklet that's there, there's a picnic table, and there had been a bike in the bushes there, but it's now been moved, so it's on the side of the McKee Street bike path, right by the picnic tables. And so anyway, they've been there for at least 3 weeks now. So someone had just reported abandoned bicycles. One of them's locked though, so I'm not
Interesting.
sure. Yeah, it
There's
is
so many
interesting.
in one spot.
Yeah.
All right, other communications?
Yeah, I just received the communication regarding the strategic plan.
I also had communications on the strategic plan, as well as the broken pipe in Pine Grove Mills creating a hazard, et cetera, on the street. Orally, that was it.
Okay. All right, we have a number of calendar items listed, and if there is nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
And
This
I
is
will,
Patty.
and I will second, so we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Hi, everybody.
Good night.
Happy
Good night.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too.
It would have been 8:30 if I wasn't a minute late. I know, sorry.
Oh, so it does count it as 8:30. Who said that?
Did I say
you-
30?
Yeah.